Hi, friends. This is Wendy Harrop, and welcome to the Say Yes to Yourself podcast. On the Say Yes to Yourself podcast, you'll hear stories from women just like us who are adding the practice of saying yes in their daily lives in big and small ways, and as a result, are experiencing the truth that everybody wins when you say yes to yourself. Saying yes to yourself is a graceful unfolding, an intentional becoming of the very best version of you. It is my hope that in these conversations, we are able to find our truth and be inspired and empowered to live our very best lives. I'm so excited to go on this journey with you, and I look forward to finding a bit of our own story in each other's.
Hello, lovelies. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm so happy that you're here. Isn't it wonderful? Isn't it wonderful how things just find us? I would actually love to know how you found this podcast. So if you are on Instagram and you want to DM me, if you want to send an email to hello@phineaswrighthouse.com, if you want to call me on the phone, if you want to text me, however you want to do it, I would love to know how you found this podcast, because I am convinced that there are no coincidences, that some fun and fabulous meetings are planned and delight us when they come together, and then some divine appointments are made on our behalf that we had no idea they were coming, and whew, weren't they fun? That is very much how I'm feeling about my conversation with today's guests. So I have some beautiful agencies of people that are promoting the books and creative projects of other people that have somehow found me, and I am meeting the most amazing women that desire to be on the podcast, which is so fun, and just another beautiful example of how we can let it be easy, and it happens. It's so, I am seriously, this podcast requires zero effort. It is all ease. It is all joy. It is all grace. It is all just flowing to me in this beautiful, abundant, gorgeous stream of connection and conversation and inspiration and joy and delight. I mean, who am I? This is so fun. And there are elements that would not delight me. And so I have a beautiful support in the form of a podcast editor, the sweet Shannon Warner, who you heard from a couple weeks ago. She's so great. So literally, there is no effort in my portion of this beautiful podcast, and I'm so happy for it. So one of these new people that, again, I have no idea how they found me, set up a gorgeous interview with a gorgeous woman who wrote a gorgeous book that sounded like she wrote it for us. And I was super excited. And I said, yes, I would love to have her on the podcast. She scheduled her appointment, all is well. And then a couple of days ago, I got an email from her publicist saying that something has come up and she needs to clear her calendar for the foreseeable future, and we can't meet. So sending lots of love and grace and prayers towards her. And they asked if they could fill that time slot with this person who is a poet, and she has a creative project. I don't know what you call it. It's an album, but she's not a musician. So it's spoken word. So she says her poems, and there is music accompanying it. And it is very beautiful and moving. And the subject of this particular work is processing the grief of losing her mother. So I don't want to say I wasn't sure, like that's not a good enough reason to be on my super special podcast or anything. I just thought, oh, I want to make sure that I'm making aligned yeses since you're trusting me to vet some of this stuff out on your behalf. Anyway, so I listened to the first track of her project. It was so beautiful and so moving. And I immediately thought, yes, yes, and yes. And so I'm so glad I did, because the conversation is really good. And it's really sweet to meet new people. And it's really sweet to meet some women that are much younger than me and are just at a different point in their journey, and that I have the opportunity to speak some wisdom and light into their lives, and they're in a place to receive it. So that just felt like a super, super glorious gift that I did not plan on. And just wanted to share that with you in case you are experiencing some unexpected opportunities to say yes, that you can trust that the universe is conspiring on our behalf. So Cleo Childs released her spoken word poetry album, Moving With, on May 15th. This album is the culmination of a 2.5 years journey of writing about the grief she experienced after losing her mom to Alzheimer's when she was 28 years old. Her mother was an English major in college, and her grandmother, who is also one of her editors, was an English teacher for 30 years. So she came by her grief processing tool of writing poetry naturally. With the spoken word poetry album, she hopes to show the path her grief took from having her mother, losing her mother, and the peace and acceptance she feels now. She also hopes to give an authentic and honest look at what her grief felt like, so other people going through grief don't feel alone and feel community in their grief. For speaking engagements, workshops, and group sessions, she is available and invites further exploration of her and her project on her website, which we have linked in the show notes. Please enjoy this beautiful conversation with Cleo Childs. Cleo Childs. I feel like yours is one of those names that has to always be said first and last together. I'm so excited to have you here, and mainly because it is an unexpected appointment, and I don't believe that there are any coincidences. So I'm super excited to see how this unfolds and how the universe conspired on our behalfs to find us in this conversation in this moment in time. Thank you so much for being here.
You're so welcome. I'm really excited about it. So much so I had like 2-3 cups of coffee, and I was like, because I wake up at 6:30 in the morning for some reason now. And I was like, I'm ready for this conversation. So I need to like drink all the coffee. So I did, and here I am, and it's a good day.
It's a great day. I'm so excited. So tell us, how are you saying yes to yourself in this season?
I think in this season, I'm saying yes to things unraveling in front of me.
Ooh.
Right? Yeah. So I'm what I realized is the second that I stopped anticipating things is when everything great happened. Right. So there's a lot of things that I could never anticipate. And those are the best things. So, like, for example, with the album, there's no way I could have anticipated that. And it just came about. And someone's like, I'll produce you. My amazing producer, Jim Riley, he said, I'll produce you. And I said, okay, yes. And then I have the most amazing publicist. Do you mind? I just want to make
Do
sure.
it.
Can I curse really quick? Just a little one.
You may.
the most badass publicist, Pam Lewis, who's amazing. I call up a number and she's like, I think I was like on the internet, and she's like, I was just looking for a new person, and I think that you might be it. And I was like, yes, I was like, and then I was like, yes. And then, all these interviews, I'm just saying yes. And I think that the most wonderful conversations, the most wonderful people are all the ones that I could never have anticipated and I never could have expected. And all I get to do is have the joy, right, of when these opportunities present themselves to me, is to say yes and to go into it with an open heart and to go into it with a joyful spirit and to go into it with this a spirit of kindness as best that I can do. And so that's how I'm kind of saying yes, is when the things unravel in front of me as I see them that I could never expect, I just say yes and wonderful things happen.
Oh, I love that. It is a graceful unfolding.
It is.
I just love how the ripple effects of our yes, if we are practicing presence, if we're practicing being in tune with ourselves, with God, with source, with universe, whatever anyone likes to call that greater infinite intelligence that is inside of us. And when we're learning to listen and trust that process and just let it unfold and let one yes lead to the next yes, which leads to the next yes, which, just like you said, if you were to look back, just think, I could have never made that happen on my own, and I could have never thunk it up even. So I just love, just letting go of the oars and letting the kayak turn from all the efforting of going upstream and just going with the flow of the river and knowing that it is actually supposed to be that easy.
Yeah, my job right now is to try to move with, as I see it, the things that are coming up in front of me. That's my job, right? The job that's being laid out, the path is being laid out before me as I kind of see it. And my job's just trying to navigate it and trying to listen to its gentle nudges as it comes and being able to say yes to those things. And I think also my yes is living in integrity to myself, figuring out what does integrity look like to me? What does my truth look like? What is authenticity? And being able to say yes to myself and yes to who I am and the decisions that feel right in my body and the decisions that also are in tune with the values and the belief systems that I hold. And those are kind of the yeses that I say yes to. Yes.
Oh, I love all of that. And what does that process look like in your life? Do you have a morning practice? Do you have how are you implementing those desires into your reality? Are you just thinking about it, or how does that work for you?
There's this wonderful thing. I love documentaries. My dog also loves documentaries. I don't know if you can hear in the background, but my dog is the best golden retriever guard dog that ever did exist. So I apologize.
I'm a golden lover as well.
She decided to also say yes. And she actually said no, 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 no to anyone that crossed our paths. But I think what I do is there's this wonderful documentary that's called, I think it's called I Am John F. Kennedy Jr. And it was all about JFK Jr. And what he said is, I have every, I'm going to butcher it, but the gist of it is I have every expectation or every option and opportunity to be a great person. I think it's far more interesting to be a good person. And so I think that for me, what I try to do is I think, what would the good person do in me? What would the good version of me do? And I live out the value of that good person. I think that that's kind of my goal, my guiding force is, what is the good that I can do? What is the opportunity to do good in this situation? How can I be able to live in kindness to myself, to others, and to the world? How can I be able to make an opportunity or a choice that is good, depending on what good is a very vague definition, and it's definitely one that's a personal one. So I just do what good is for me, which is to live integrity to myself, my values, my belief system, to be kind, to make kind decisions. And then I always, judge a decision, tried to also take a second to pause. I believe that instincts are wonderful things, and they definitely served us from an evolutionary perspective. But sometimes instincts are not exactly the best thing, right? The first thing that comes to mind is maybe not the optimal thing, right? I could be hangry, for example, which happens a great deal to my husband's knowledge. And I could say, I'm hangry, right? Reese, let's take a second here, and let's not maybe yell at the husband. Let's really, be kind to the husband because he's trying to feed you, and you are hungry. I think that I try to just live in alignment with myself, and with alignment with what is the best version of myself. What would that person make in the decision in this instance? And I do that.
I love that. Okay, so you have referenced yourself as Reese. I have referenced you as Cleo. And
I
so
contain multitudes.
I
Yes.
love it. And so let's talk about that, please.
Yes. So my natural name is Reese, Cleo's honor. I decided back when I was 15 that if I ever was to do something artistic, it never came to my mind that I ever would, but I just knew that my name, especially like my last name, was very hard to spell, very hard to pronounce. It's German. It means tooth in German. So we're from a family dentist. And I always loved my middle name, Cleo. And my pseudonym, my pen name, the last name is Childs, which is my grandmother's, who's my maternal grandmother's, my mom's mom. She is one of my editors. She actually taught me how to write, really. She's my biggest champion with writing. She was an English teacher for 33 years, has a 6 years degree and more than a master's in English. And she is one of my biggest champions. And so her maiden name was Childs, and it's a name that died out in our family because we had no males to carry it on. We're a family of, predominantly females. And so I get to bring back a fallen last name with my last name, Childs. I get to honor my grandmother, who I'm very, very close with and I adore. And I get to be able to also have an alliteration, Cleo Childs. It's also two single syllables, which is nice. And I think it kind of flows well to each other. So I was really bored, like on a Saturday when I was 15. And I was like, what would my pen name be? And I came up with that. And then I got to be able to use it, which is just an absolute joy 15 years later. So I will respond also to, hey, that girl, that one over there. But I contain multitudes. And so I think I also, my natural name is Reese Honor, but my pen name and the name that I go by when I, I'm talking and then I released the album under is Cleo Childs, mainly because it's easier to Google. It's a lot more Googleable, which as a marketer, I did marketing for 10 years and it was incredibly important. And plus people can spell it and say it. And so I thought I might give a kindness to everyone else where they don't have to figure out how to spell or say his honor.
Oh my gosh, that's so great. And it's reminding me when you said you also answer to, hey, that girl over there. I have a 10-year-old, and probably a year and a half ago, we were driving together and we had picked up a friend that she's good friends with Amelia, but hadn't spent a lot of time around me. And she was going to ask me a question, but then she said, oh, what should I call your mom? She asked Amelia, and Amelia said, you can call her Mrs. Harrop or Queen.
That makes you feel good, doesn't it?
I'm so glad. I was like, yes, I do answer to Queen as well. That is amazing. And I will call you Queen back.
Oh, I love that. I say that with my friend, one of my friends said, hey, Queen. And she goes, I call her, she's just, I think the word over, I think she's the bee's knees. And so I do that. I have, like fun pet names with my friends. I love that very much. But what a wonderful honor to have that from a daughter. Like, you're like, yeah,
I do refer to her as Queen.
That's fantastic.
Yes.
I greatly appreciate this.
Yes. We are foregoing princess in every way that we can, and we're going straight to the top. So that feels really good. So thank you for that reminder. And I love how your future self informed your 15-year-old self with such beautiful intention. And with this inkling of an artistic project. So can you share how this came about? You said that you love writing, but how did this all come together in this really beautiful, poignant project that you've created?
I'm thinking. So it's been interesting. Is I never wrote creatively.
Interesting.
I'm really great at research papers. I'm a
Okay.
damn good research paper writer. My grandma labored to teach me how to write a research paper. You know, my English teacher taught me in college how to write a research paper. And I was really good at doing it, but I could write a mean research paper. But I never wrote creatively. But growing up, I was always surrounded by the arts. My grandmother, you know, being an English teacher, my mom being an English major from the University of Georgia, it was really important to us that we always read and we had the great works of literature. And, you know, definitely we're surrounded by words. I love wordplay. I love puns. I love dad jokes, things like that. So I was very familiar with words, but more along the lines of, you know, making them funny, right? And figuring out like, oh, you know, and then doing it typically, unfortunately, to my grandmother's much chagrin at her expense sometimes, which she was not too pleased with. But I love words, but I never wrote creatively. I lost my mom at 28 to Alzheimer's. She got diagnosed when I was 21. I lost her at 28. This is about 2.5 years ago. And shortly after she passed, in the middle of the night, around 2 a.m. in the morning, I heard two lines in my head. And I went downstairs and I was like, I wonder what this is. And I went downstairs and I wrote them down. And that's when I wrote my first poem. And it felt a little bit better. I was in intense grief at this point.
Sure.
I went into pure isolation pretty much for about 6 months. I did not talk to anyone. I did not do anything. I shut down and I went into what I called a cave. And I was intensely grieving and everything hurt. And it was just awful. And that was the first thing that I did that made it hurt a little bit less, is when I wrote. And so I just started to write because it hurt a little bit less. And I wrote not with the intention of ever having it ever be published. I never intended for anyone ever to see this. Never intended to you know, be shown to the light of day. But what I did want to do is I wanted to make it authentic and honest and truthful to what I was feeling in the moment. That was my shining light, is if I said what feeling was in my body, I would put out words and then I could process it. I could read it. I could be able to understand it and I could be able to move through it. And that's what I did for about 2.5 years. And then back in December, I put down my pen for about maybe a year or so. I have ADHD, which means that I go through things. And I was, you know, I think also is when writing, with time, healing occurred. And so my dependence that I had to make myself feel better, I was able to find other things to make myself feel better. That was really given to the writing at the very beginning. And so I was able to kind of re-enter the world after about 6 months. And then I was inspired by songwriting. I got into songwriting maybe about December, and I was inspired by songwriters like, you know, John Denver was my mother's favorite. I was inspired by Dylan and Leonard Cohen and Mitchell, and I was just really inspired by the songwriters. And so I went back and started to write from the different perspective, which is songwriting perspective. And I wanted to learn. And so I went to a songwriting mentorship class or session. And I met my producer, Jim Riley, there, and I showed him a few things. And he thought I was worth producing. And so that's how I kind of got into that. Once again, saying yes. I had no intention of ever getting produced. I had no intention of ever letting my poems see the light of day. And in fact, the album that I initially went into is the second album. It's the one I'm currently working on. I'm editing it right now. But my amazing editor, Cherie, I would read her things about mom, and she'd be like, you have to make this album. And I went and I realized that if I had the only opportunity to make one album in my whole life, that I wanted it to be about mom, and I changed it. And so it became about mom. And that's how this album kind of developed. It was never intended to. But I think that that's probably why, hopefully, maybe will be meaningful to people, is because it was meaningful to me first. And now it can be meaningful maybe to others. I can't control if it's meaningful or not, but I know it's meaningful to me. And I hope that maybe it can be meaningful to others.
Of course, that's the intention it was written in, and it was healing for you, and it will be healing for others as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's so beautiful. Yes, it's a valid intention. It's so good. And it's beautiful work. So in anticipation of this conversation, I listened to the first track. Is that what we would consider it? The first track. So this is a spoken word, and which is not quite music, not quite poetry. It's a beautiful mixture of both. And the first track was so beautiful, so touching, so poignant that I thought, okay, yes, I absolutely want to have this conversation with this woman. And no, I can't listen to any more at this moment in time, because it was very powerful. It felt sacred. It didn't feel like something that I could just listen to while I was doing my chores. It felt like I wanted to hold space for the experience of listening. And my mom is still here. My mom does not have Alzheimer's. It's not that I'm specifically connecting with you in our shared life experience, but why I can tell you that your work does provide healing, that it does provide impact, that I'm glad that's your hope. And I'm just going to reflect back to you. You can upgrade from hope to certainty and knowing that it is having impact. You're 30, and that's super sweet. And I'm going to tell you something. 50, you're going to love it, because there's this shift that happens. It happened in me. It happens in all the women that I speak to that are in their 50s, that it's this combination of not caring anymore what other people think, and like having some life experience that we actually know what we want, and now we are moving in that direction. So from your future self, just like your future self, your 30-year-old self told your 15-year-old self, your 55-year-old self is telling you that you can be sure, you can be certain, you can be confident. I am a total stranger who did not seek out this conversation. And listening to your beautiful words, your beautiful heart, your beautiful project moved me in a way that led to my yes to have this conversation. So I would love for you to not use the word hope anymore, and that you can say, I know that this work is impactful.
I feel like I'm going to cry. And I think the reason why I shall. It's terrifying to release something. I talked to some artists beforehand.
Yeah.
And I said, is it terrifying? Or am I just in there? No, it's, absolutely, it's terrifying. And I did it anyway with the hope that it could help one person, in which case it would be a success, right? I think that I had to define at the very beginning, what is success to me? And success was not, people say it's great, or, I had to make sure that I was right on the money of what was, and my definition of success was, is it meaningful? And the fact that you did, and it makes me I feel so joyful, and I feel so happy that is the measurement of success that you felt, because that was the measurement of success that I determined for myself, is what is success to me.
Right. That's how all of our intentions work.
Yeah.
How we intend something to land, that's how it goes out. Now, we are not in control of how it's received or by
Correct.
whom it is received.
Correct.
But when we set the intention for it to bring healing, impact, clarity, camaraderie, a feeling that someone sees me, knows me, or can just evoke tenderness in a total stranger, you did that. You did that. And anytime you go to your former narrative, sorry, now I'm going to get mom bossy on you. Anytime you go
Yes,
back,
queen.
that's right. Go back to your narrative of, I really just want this. I really just hope this does something. No, no more. No more hope and no more I really want. There is a knowing, a certainty, and a clarity, because it did. And I just told you it did. And I'm not making it up, because I'm just like, the whole reason we're supposed to have this conversation is for this part of the conversation, for you to know you are an artist, you bring healing, you provide positive impact, and that is true. I
Okay, now
declare
I'm
it
definitely
as
crying.
queen. Your
To
tears
the
are
listeners,
welcome
I am
here.
crying. Yes, and I'm so grateful.
Me too.
I'm just so grateful. And I think the thing is that I did it, and I'm so,
Can you stop for a second?
please,
I
yes.
really want you to receive those words. So I want you to take a deep breath, shut your eyes. Deep breath in through your nose and hold it, and then out through your mouth. And do it one more time, please. And I want you to breathe in those words and hold them, and then let them out. You may continue.
What I hope for the album, what I intended,
What I know.
what I know, is that when I created it, that I put it together in such a way that people went through, or I intended it for people to go through the emotions. And I went through, it's a very emotional album. And it takes the listener, the intention was it takes the listener from having my mother to losing her like I did, to the grief that I went through, to the joy that I have now, and the peace and acceptance that I have now. And so I think what you said earlier, there was a word that you used, which is that it is an experience. It's a journey. And the words and the music are catalyst for that journey that the listener can go on with me. I was also, because I wrote so honestly about what was going on, because I wrote it solely for me, and it was a reflection. I am pleased with it, but I think more than anything, I'm glad that there's an opportunity to listen to someone who also has the same experience. Because I think that grief is a very unique thing, but there are certain universal feelings that one goes through grief. My experience of my grief journey is very different from another person's. But I feel like anger is, I think, embedded in grief. Disillusionment with God, at least for me, was embedded in grief. Bitterness, right? And then sadness. But for me, there was the hope, there was the joy, and there was the peace and acceptance.
Yes, you're moving up the emotional scale.
Yes, and the intention is to let the listener go on that journey with me, where I lead I leave the listener with peace and acceptance in a way that's natural and organic in the way that I came to it. So it's an emotional journey rather than one that's musical. The musical and the words, I always said that I put the words and we did the music to lend itself to the feelings of the emotions. When I was talking to one of my amazing editors, her name is Mary, I read her one of the poems, and it was about bitterness. And she says, she said, what is this about? And I said, what does it feel like to you? And she said, bitterness. And I said, it's about bitterness. So the words and the music are all vehicles for the emotions that I went through. And my hope is that the listener or
My
the
knowing.
intention, I'm working on words are important. Intention.
A belief is just a thought you keep thinking. So once you keep saying, I know this is the experience of my listener, it becomes your new belief.
It's wonderful. Isn't it wonderful the way that neuroplasticity, just the way that we can change and neurons can just, rearrange themselves as it's just, I love the brain. But
yes, in kindergarten, I wanted to marry David Brewer. I'm so happy that I could think a new thought.
I know. Well,
and have a new belief.
I wanted to be the person at the toll road that collected the money because I didn't realize that that's what taxes were. I just thought people just drove up. So
gave you
went
money?
to Georgia 400 and gave you money. And I'm like, what a wonderful job.
I love that.
And I still think that's a wonderful job if you didn't have to, if it wasn't for the paying for the taxes, which taxes are great and everything. I understand the point of it. But I just, in my head, I just thought people just drove up to the toll road. They gave you money. You got to keep it. And I thought that was a job. I was like, that's great.
And we reach for the highest branch we can see.
I thought that was fantastic. And I think that I just, the intention behind it is that the listener can go on the journey of grief that I went on. And it is an experience. And lovingly, I can take you on it and end you in peace and acceptance. Yeah. And maybe that can help somehow to find peace and acceptance, joy or understanding and camaraderie and the friendship.
Community.
And the grief that you might be experiencing, or in the understanding of someone that you might know that's going through grief. I think that my intention, I'm being very cognizant of my words. My intention.
I'm no fun to be around if you are.
No, that's how you rewire brains. That's how neurons work.
Exactly.
It's the intention is that understanding, grace, kindness can come. And that's meaning really from the album.
It's so good. Okay. I have 2 questions.
Yeah.
First, I would like to know your favorite part of the album now that it's done. And it can change. You might say on Tuesdays, this was my favorite part. And 3 weeks ago, this was my favorite part because I'm certain that it continues to be an evolution, similarly to this podcast, where I don't necessarily prepare for each episode. I don't have a script. None of that. But I've been preparing for 55 years to have the conversations, so there's very much an evolution that happens in the conversations for me and as I receive insight from my guests. So it's a living, breathing thing. And I'm assuming that you have a similar interaction with your work. So in this moment, what is your favorite part of it?
In this moment, I have 3.
Ooh, yay.
Greedy. But the first one that came to mind is I described who my mother was. I was able to put her in words. And I think I can recite it. Do you want
I do. Yes. That was going to be my second question. So yay.
I can do it. So I've said it a lot. Okay. My child's mind splintered when told my angel mother was not anointed. My child's mind couldn't comprehend. No angels or demons came to claim her. She was a woman, completely incomplete, a tapestry of talents to wrap myself in. She didn't hang the moon. She swung from it, softly on a swing, crafted by woodland fairies whose kitsch houses she made as a child. Georgia red clay flowed through her veins, coursing when catching crick salamanders under the watchful eye of her stick horse. My sister and I fell asleep to her lullabies, sung by her gentle voice rivaling chimes, rocking us as she swung above the world. And that's who my mother was.
It's so good.
The other favorite thing that I have is my poem about disillusionment with God. It's called Gratitude for the Lambs. And the reason why is it's one of the few that needed no editing.
Ooh.
And it came out and it was good. And there was a moment where my mother came and interacted with me. I was told that I ran it by Mary, who is the final seal of approval. I have an editing process. And if it goes through Mary, she, I should give her a stamp or something. It's Mary approved. And it was early on in the process when I was working with Mary. And Mary said it was exquisite. And I was so pleased. She said, there's no edits. She said, read it to me twice. And I read it to her twice. She said, it's exquisite. And she said it reminded her of Leonard Cohen, which is a huge compliment.
Yeah.
Huge compliment.
Exquisite is a huge compliment.
It was exquisite. And it reminded her of Leonard Cohen. A week and a half later, it was during Lent. My mother's church growing up, or our church growing up that my mother was very active in, was St. James United Methodist Church. And Miss Weldon, one of her very good friends, sent me a email that they had sent out. And it was a story or a commentary that my mother wrote back in 2010 about lambs. And it's all about gratitude for the lambs, my poem. And my mother's response was about lambs that they put out. So I got told that my poem was exquisite. It was Leonard Cohen-esque. And then a week and a half later, I got to learn about my mother's response and way of learning about lambs. And my other favorite thing that I have been able to enjoy from the album are conversations like these, getting to meet new people, getting to learn, getting to have my brain rewired, right? Being able to learn new things and being able to meet new people and being able to talk and be able to learn about my work in a way, because it all comes as kind of stream of consciousness to me. I hear it, it's auditory. And so I hear it and then I get to understand it. And I think through conversations like this, I get to understand it better and I get to meet new people and I get to hear how they've interacted with the work and I get to understand it more. And it's incredibly gratifying. And I'm just so grateful. So those are the three. I know I'm a little bit greedy and, chomping at the bit there, but those are my three. We
live in abundance and possibility.
We do. I love to live in an abundance mindset. Yes. So thank you for letting me do that.
I am only available for what delights me.
Yes.
So everything is my favorite. And I say I recorded a podcast episode earlier today and I was recording the introduction and I was talking about something that's coming up on the calendar, which is my favorite. And then, and this other thing, and that's my favorite. I was like, oh, well, that's what happens when you're only available for what delights you. Everything that you do is your favorite. And I'm just going to say this. Today in the mirror, I went on a little rampage of appreciation for myself.
Do it.
And I was telling myself how much fun it is to hang out with me. And
it is fun to hang out.
It is fun to hang out with me.
I agree with that.
And I am living in joy and delight. And it is a joy and delight to spend time with myself. And I love me. And I love the yeses that I'm a part of. And I love that my yeses are invitations for other people as well. And I don't let their non-yes, keep me from mine, and I'm
Yes.
just going to keep inviting them into it. And it's just so beautiful. So you can have 300 favorite parts, and 3 is not greedy. It's
No, well, I mean,
actually, it's aligned and in tune. And when you know yourself and you can answer that question, that is beautiful.
thank you. Well, Julie Andrews, she had lots of favorite things. These
Yes,
are a
she
few of
did.
my favorite things.
That's right.
So if it's good enough for Julie Andrews, it's good
We
enough
will
for me.
not argue with that queen.
Mm-mm. Long may she reign.
Long may
Supreme.
she reign. Yes. Are there any other pieces that you would like to recite?
That one's the one I know offhand. I can find you haven't heard the second one, have you?
No.
So I might be able to read that too. Let
Okay.
me see if I
That
can.
will be fantastic. And we will link everything in the show notes so people can, but just that first track, even, oh my gosh, it's so
That's my
good.
author's note. So that's kind of, you'll see is that everything after that is different. So that's my author's note. So this is the second one. So I'll read this.
Okay.
Okay. I made a bargain with the universe, and your cry, the contract was signed. You are not mine. You are not yours either. The universe is your keeper. I only borrowed you through a deal brokered out of view. You who is made of folk tunes, a carousel of dawns, newborn fawns, and roaring lions' yawns. You are agony, a child of the unknown, the daughter of ecstasy, the tomb of my womb, and it frightens me. It does not lighten me. For you are nothing and everything, a tiny infinity, which entices me. Though you suckle at my breast, carry the blood of my ancestors, the earth where they rest you hold under your tiny fingernails, you are not mine. To love you is to endure defeat, become completely incomplete. I humbly offer my broken body to your tiny feet. I surrender all of me. You were never mine to choose. You have nothing to prove. You are only yours to lose. Your agony, a child of the unknown, the daughter of ecstasy, a tomb of my womb, and it frightens me. It does not lighten me. For you are nothing and everything, a tiny infinity, which entices me.
Beautiful work.
That's from mother to daughter. It's my mother to me.
Mm-hmm. It's gorgeous. Okay, I have one last question for you, and you don't have to answer it if you don't know, or
Love it.
it's really not your story to tell anyway. But how is your sister interacting with your project and the way that you're processing this?
It's a very interesting question. My sister and I are very different. My sister's 4 years younger than I am. Her name is Lainey. I think Lainey right now is actually off traveling the world. My sister is a world traveler. She got her degree in international affairs from Northeastern University. Very proud of her. And she got a full ride scholarship there. And so she was in the Peace Corps for a little bit. And now she's traveling across the world. So we really haven't been able to talk too much about it. But I would say that the way that she and I process is very, very, very different. And I would just hope that the way that she's processed, because, it's been about 2.5 years, is one that is meaningful and that is healing for her. And maybe that's traveling, and she's doing her process that way. And she's doing that by engaging with the world. And I think from what I know is that she's very pleased with the work and proud of it. And that's what I hope. And I just hope for her that she is safe traveling the world and that it's meaningful, the people that she's meeting. But mainly, I hope that she's safe. I think that it's always scary when you have someone that goes, because she goes by herself. She's very independent, and she's a go-getter, and she is, fiery and courageous in a way that I don't know if I am. And I just always hope that she is safe.
That's beautiful. And, you're not a stranger to grief. So it makes sense that you would want the people that you love to be safe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We're sisters.
It's a beautiful, mysterious bond.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps the topic of another piece of work.
Perhaps it'd be my third. So I'm working on the second one. I'm editing it currently. I'm quite pleased about it. And I'm really, really proud. And it's going to be very, very, very different. But isn't that wonderful?
Yes. And what do you know to be true about that piece?
I believe it will be surprising.
Love it. That's so great. I have loved this conversation. Reese Cleo, hard name to spell, Childs.
Yes.
Lots of hyphens.
Easy.
Lots of hyphens in there.
I contain multitudes. I
Yes,
am
you do.
that girl, that girl with animals on her sweaters. That's pretty much me. I always say that I love these animal sweaters. So
It's gorgeous.
I know. It's this brand called Palava. They're like from Britain or something. Okay. And they have all the cutest. I got a sweater that has like an otter on it. It's so cute.
It is cute.
My otter
and this
sweater
is beautiful. These are hummingbirds on your sweater.
These are so I'm wearing, for the listeners, I'm just going to describe my outfit. It is a kind of dusty pink, and it has 2 hummingbirds on it that are I think they're stitched in, and it is quite cute. My friend, she has the most amazing teenagers. They're throwing me a tea party after this.
Oh my gosh,
so
cute.
I got dressed up for my tea party. So that's why I'm wearing my cute outfit, not only for the interview, but I have to go to a tea party. So
it's beautiful. And they're embroidered. And there's a beautiful 2-tone on the collar and button panel. So this is like anthropology embroidered hummingbirds on your sweater for my dear listeners, if you're envisioning something.
Highly recommend animals on sweaters. It really just helps to you're like, am I alone in this moment? No, I got 2 hummingbirds on a sweater. I got an otter on my back. Just makes you feel a little bit you're never alone.
Right. And so much fodder for the creative process. Thank you so much for your time, for sharing this beautiful work with the world, and for receiving the accolades as truly and kindly and authentically as they are offered to you, those that you get the benefit of hearing firsthand, and those that you will never hear about. Receive them all.
Well, thank you for inviting me to receive them. I think I've kind of been in this mode of, as I've just said, like hoping like maybe it'll do. And now I can go and switch into a new mode, neuroplasticity, and now be in the receiving mode.
That's right.
And isn't that just a lovely thing? So thank you for this conversation, because I can switch my brain over into this other part and be able to enjoy it. And I just want to say thank you sincerely for allowing me to do that.
It feels a lot better over on that side, doesn't it?
It feels different. Yeah. It feels different for sure. So I'm getting used to it. We'll see how we're letting the neurons just connect to each other.
You wear it well. Please tell everybody where they can find your work, where they can follow you, all of that good stuff.
Yeah, I'm on Cleo Childs, so CleoChilds.com. And the Instagram is Cleo Childs Poetry. But I'm making a decision. I think intentional, right? Yeah. Is the way that most people are going to interact with me is on the website. I'm not a big Instagrammer. I'm not a big social media person. I'm a marketer by nature or by trade. So I know how important it is. But I think that the way that I want people to interact with me is through my work. And so I really would direct people. I have an Instagram page. I don't know if I'll ever use it, but I do have it, and it has a big magnolia on it. So when you listen to the album, you realize why there is a magnolia. But the website, you can see pictures of my mom, and you can see the poems. You can be able to listen to these interview again, because it's going to be so good that you want to listen to again. And so you can have a link there. And then also you can be able to really just see who my mom was and see what she looked like, other than, me just describing her in a poem. And that's where I would direct you to, is cleochilds.com.
Beautiful. We will link everything in the show notes. And I'm so excited to interact with your work that's coming out next.
I'm excited to do it. We're in the process. It's being birthed. It's being like incubated, so eventually it'll be out, to the world, but we're not quite there yet. But it's exciting. It's an exciting
Is it Mary approved?
It's not. I'm actually having a Mary approved. That's why it's not.
That's right. We're holding it. We're going to interview Mary next.
I'm literally going to go get Mary a stamp. I'm going to get a stamp on the Etsy, and I'm going to stamp all my work if it's Mary approved or not. It's Sheree approved, but it's not Mary approved. So
okay, there's a hierarchy, I'm sure.
There is. I'm a very structured person. I like processes. So I got my editing part goes to Grandma, then it goes to Sheree, then it goes to Mary. And then I just do that for all of them.
I love it. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. As always, any links or notes mentioned can be found at phineaswrighthouse.com in the podcast section of our site, or in the show notes below. And if you haven't connected with me personally, come find me on Instagram at Phineas Wrighthouse and let me know you listened to this episode. I'd love to get to know you. Thank you for sharing this time with me. I know your days are full, and I'm really grateful that you chose to spend some of your precious time right here. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any of these delightful conversations. I'll see you next week.